Let's move on to China, because I think this is a story that's playing out this week, getting not enough attention in the press. Here's NPR. Chinese leader Xi Jinping name-checked the United States in remarks during the annual session of parliament underway in Beijing this week, saying it was leading Western countries in an effort to encircle and suppress China. This is a quote from Xi Jinping. Western countries led by the U.S. have implemented comprehensive containment, encirclement, and suppression against us, bringing unprecedented severe challenges to our country's development. Now, on Tuesday, the foreign minister also criticized the United States by name. Here's a quote from him. The U.S. claims it wants to compete to win with China and does not seek conflict, but in fact, the so-called competition by the U.S. is all-around containment and suppression, a zero-sum game of life and death. Why does the U.S. ask China not to provide weapons to Russia? Well, it keeps selling arms to Taiwan. One more quote to hit you with here. When the U.S. says it wants to install guardrails and have no conflict in China-U.S. relations, it really means that the U.S. requires China not to fight back when hit or scolded, but this cannot be done. Now, China, you have two high-ranking officials, including Xi Jinping himself, calling out the United States by name this week, by the way, as they continue to basically support Putin's invasion of Ukraine. This is a really big development. The Wall Street Journal has a long story out this week probing whether America is prepared in any capacity for a potential battle over Taiwan and what that could escalate into in terms of a war between the United States and China, a hot war between the United States and China. So very, 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 very big deal that Xi Jinping himself called the United States out by name, including the foreign minister as well. I've been reading actually a bunch of Xi Jinping speeches this week, actually really over the last couple of weeks. The fact that he used the name, the United States, obviously a lot of China observers picked up on that right away. Ryan, what do you make of it?
The argument that the Chinese are making is that that the U.S. says it has put up guardrails around its kind of China confrontation that will prevent a Cold War from developing into a hot war. And they're saying that, no, if you are barreling down the road out of control at this speed, there are no amount of guardrails that are going to prevent an accident. And I do think that the people of the United States need to be deeply worried about that.
Yeah.
At the same time, we shouldn't forget that the Chinese government, around 2007, 2008, in the wake of the financial crisis, seeing the United States weakening, really it embarked aggressively on a policy, an intentional policy of confronting the United States and undermining the United States in a significant way. Helping to, our politicians, participated in this eagerly. But there was an explicit kind of goal to hollow out American manufacturing, the middle class, and I think that you occasionally see people talk about fentanyl in this context, but an authoritarian country like China, which is able to so effectively kind of monitor social media, keep control of their economy, isn't going to have a multi-billion-dollar fentanyl export industry operating without kind of the approval of the leaders of the Chinese Communist Party.
Absolutely. They know exactly how much of those precursor chemicals are being shipped to Mexico.
Right. They could, and similarly to the United States, having some awareness, some involvement that our allies are the ones that are actually shipping this in. Well, it's important. It's important for our allies to have this funding source, so we're going to kind of look the other way. On the Chinese side, it's like, well, this is weakening our trade rival. It's helping to hollow out a manufacturing base. It's really eviscerating, an entire generation of people. All of those things tied in, make me look a little cynically at some of the complaints, the crocodile tears from from the Chinese there.
Well, the flirting with Vladimir Putin makes me look at all of it very cynically as well when we're talking about an actual invasion. Now, what the Chinese see in that is a rebuke to NATO. It is a rebuke to the West. It is a rebuke to what they see as Western expansionism. And so obviously it makes sense that they come in and look at Putin's invasion of Ukraine as a sort of strength, a powerful rebuke, something that can genuinely very much weaken the West. I want to ask about reports which I've seen some interesting debate over, that China may be considering supplying weapons to Vladimir Putin. I've seen skepticism of those reports as basically saying this is unsubstantiated warmongering, and I'm entirely prepared to believe that's the case. It also wouldn't surprise me if it was true in some capacity as well. So all of this coming on the heels of that, I think, is relevant too.
Yeah, and what we can know for sure, thanks to the Chinese diplomats here, is that the U.S. is, in fact, pressuring China not to supply weapons to Russia, because the Chinese just complained that the U.S. is pressuring China not to supply weapons to Russia. So how seriously China is actually considering doing that, I think is an open question. I think it's clear that Russia has asked for that support. I think that reporting is pretty solid. And it's also completely intuitive. Like, the manufacturing base of the Russian economy with under sanctions is able to create only so many missiles, only so many tanks, only so much material for its invasion. So where it would stand to reason that they would go to China. And so China this week complaining that it's unfair. Like, how come, it sounds like 7-year-olds like on both sides. Wait, how come you get to fund Ukraine and you get to supply Ukraine with weapons, but we can't supply Russia with weapons? And there's actually no good answer to that other than because we're the empire and we say so.
No, and the Chinese economy is another thing to keep in mind here. Obviously, not where Xi Jinping would want it to be at this moment, post-COVID. But I would say, when you look at the Wall Street Journal reporting and other reporting that we've covered here for a long time, one thing that worries me is this could be coming faster than people realize. And I'm not talking about, at the nuclear scale, just some level of conflict over Taiwan, which could escalate very quickly, in the same sense that we are now dealing with those concerns in Ukraine. Any hot confrontation over Taiwan, obviously you have the same type of risk, and that could be coming more quickly than people realize, specifically because China understands we have a limited time frame, or they have a limited time frame before we are able to rebuild our defense capacity to meet some of what would be needed in a amphibious situation, hot war situation over those islands in the South China Sea over Taiwan. That's a huge, huge, huge concern. They know that narrows every single month that they have in front of them, because the more that we're resupplying ourselves some of these weapons that have actually gone to Ukraine that would be useful in a hot confrontation over Taiwan, the semiconductors that we're able to reshore, again, that can happen in about 3 years is the estimate, and it started about 6 months ago. So these are things that genuinely keep me up at night.
And one amendment to what I said earlier, you can make a plausible argument for why it's okay to fund, obviously, the defense of Ukraine versus the offense of Russia, because Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine did not invade Russia. But from the Chinese perspective, and I think this is what's important, they don't see in any circumstance the United States acting as just merely defensive, merely a defensive posture. Yeah. Like, they see U.S. offensive presence all over the world. And so every action that they see the United States taking, they see as a projection of American power, not a defense of just ideals of liberty and democracy.
Well, yeah, and this is world history in perpetuity for the future, by the way, because it's what happens in high-tech nuclear order. No matter what, you're going to continue trying to untangle and get to the bottom of who started what. But Belt and Road is like a euphemism for Chinese expansionism. And euphemism, I say that's just the language itself, but the policy, it's a friendly face for exactly. And again, when you read speeches from from Xi Jinping, it's very clear how they see Chinese expansionism, socialism with Chinese characteristics, sort of undermining the West, not just, they talk about mankind and humankind a lot, not just undermining the United States, but spreading outside just China. And so when you have nuclear technology, everybody shares a border. The great powers share a border. If you have a nuke, you share a border with every single other country in the world. So we will, if it feels like echoes of the Cold War, as people say over and over again, yes, but that's only because we are 100 years into nuclear history. Human history looks like this. Nuclear technology changes and it's just a straight line up, and we are in the very early stages of that era. So it's these echoes of the Cold War, get used to it.
Yeah, and I wish Belt and Road was the way that the U.S. would express its power instead of just blowing up belts and roads. Like we showed it worked with the Marshall Plan.
Well, you mean
that was one of our most effective kind of diplomatic forays of the entire second half of the 20th century, rebuilding Europe. And then we pivoted to we're gonna break unions, we're gonna break social democracies, we're gonna keep wages low so that our corporations can continue funneling cheap goods into the country, so that we can then suppress our own kind of discontent within the country by making sure that the price of TVs continues to go down.
I mean, Belt and Road, there is debt trap diplomacy based. We talked about the World Bank last week. I mean, it's debt trap diplomacy that is used to blackmail developing countries.
Right. It's not great, but better than death squad diplomacy is what I would argue. If you got to have one form or the other.
Right.
Maybe
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.